Hi. Today I just would like to explain a few things about, well, I suppose it's about me and about the kind of work that I do, and I suppose what I'm supporting in the world as far as human consciousness goes. And I suppose I see myself as a bit of a sort of link and connect and tidier upper, in the sense I do strive to banish confusion, because in confusion there's too much room for bad things to happen, even under cover of good, And so to me, confusion is our enemy. That's our main enemy, is confusion. And, confusion in our world has led people, for example, to believe and just blindly accept that children are minors, lesser human beings. We just accept it, and and there's ways that I think that just don't seem to fit in with the world, no matter where I turn. I don't fit in with standard standard practices and beliefs in most of the religions, because when I look at the religions, at the texts that the religions are based on, and I start to remove the confusions, I realise that the religions themselves are very far removed from the texts that they're actually based on, and that, the religion has become something else, separate, really. Like, for example, the idea that Jesus is the Son of God. I've read the Bible. I cannot see anywhere in there where Jesus calls himself the Son of God. All I can see is that he calls himself the Son of Man, and he calls everybody his brother and sister. And he taught us to pray not to his Father, but to our Father. So if he was the Son of God, why didn't he say, dear Jesus, oh Jesus' Father who art in heaven? He says, our Father who art in heaven. And then I have to ask myself, well, why is our Father in heaven? Why isn't he here on earth? You see? And then I understand, how the intelligence at work in the information that's passed to us in the Lord's Prayer. It's like a time capsule, because it's explaining to us we're not living in a patriarchy. We are living in an oligarchy, because Jesus supported the matriarchy, and that's why he explains to the woman who he meets on his way, I think it might be to Bethlehem, I'm not sure now, but she mentions a husband, and he says to her, you have no husband. You see, even though she says she's got a husband, he tells her she has no husband, and instantly she recognises him as a prophet of the Lord. Well, how could she do that unless she intuitively connected with his understanding and her own understanding of a lived experience, that she was actually just a slave, because as a woman she had no rights, you see, which in those days, in Jesus' days in Israel, or, well, Palestine, women didn't have any rights. And actually the only other place where that was the same was in Rome. Most other countries of the world at that time, men and women had equal rights. They respected each other. Children were treated like priests, like gods. They were considered really divine. To hurt a child was the biggest crime you could ever commit. So there were very different standards of society operating in Israel, Palestine and Rome, than they were operating then in most other parts of the world within human consciousness at that time. For example, we know in Britain, the Celtic people, far from living in caves and wearing animal skins, as the Romans had portrayed us, were actually very sophisticated, making the best metals in the world, and Rome was trading. You know, Rome got most of its metals from the Celtic people, in return trading for other food products and things. So, and those people, you know, women were warriors, they were leaders, they were religious leaders. The whole society was based on a form of social support for people in need. You know, it was the elderly had to be looked after, children had to be respected. You know, I'm not saying they were perfect societies, but what I am saying is that they had a very different attitude towards women, and they had a law. They lived by laws which respected nature, and, you know, which respected people's rights. And we know for a fact that Rome lived by the opposite. It didn't respect people's rights. According to them, only a few people, the people who had the most gold, had the right to rule, and everybody else had to be their slave. And if the people ruling felt like they wanted to harm children or kill people for fun, then that's what they'll do, because that's their right to do, because they're God, they make the laws, and basically their law is do what you want, as long as you can do it. If you can do it and get away with it, do it. That was their law. Whereas the native peoples of most of the world and were following a different kind of a law, which was to do with universal law and an understanding that life is about giving and receiving and being respectful and, you know, being a human being, you know, living with responsibility and self-control. Now, amazingly, I found this video today, and it's been put up by the social experimentalist, and it says a true revolutionary. And I'll leave you the links to the first part 1 and part 2. And I was listening to this man, and this man has told me more about myself and about what's happening than I've learned from, you know, all the videos I've watched about David Icke. Okay. Now, for a start, he has helped me. Without him, I wouldn't have realised, really, that what I'm doing is lateral thinking. That is what I do. And, you know, I'd like to thank him, because it has confused me, you know, why I don't seem to fit in anywhere, and why my approach and understanding just can't, it isn't being accepted. And he's absolutely right, because very few people are thinking laterally, you see. And he explains, you know, lateral thinking, which is basically to approach a problem in a creative way, you know, and to find the truth, you see, because that's the only reason why we want to find the truth. You know, I'll just get you this word definition up, and I've not spelled it very well there. The solving of problems by an indirect and creative approach, typically through viewing the problem in a new and unusual light, you see. And so the new and unusual light is often the way forward, because the usual lights, we know, are misleading us. Sometimes, not all the time, you know. And again, this is where the confusions come in. Now, David Icke, for example, a lot of people are saying that people like David Icke and Alex Jones are shills and the misleading people and blah blah blah. Now, whether that's true or not, or to what degree it's true, we need to put that to one side. As a judgment, you know, we need to refrain from judging the people but rather to look at the facts of the situation, the facts that we know. And so either way, no matter whether these people are genuinely good or bad people, you know, like genuinely out to mislead and misguide, or actually just doing their best to share the truth, but at the same time being heavily compromised by other forces that really mean if they didn't compromise in some way, they wouldn't be able to get out even the little bit of truth that they get out, you see. So in this video, you know, this person's saying that David Icke's been exposed as part of the Illuminati. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But what I will say is that I have noticed that people like David Icke and Alex Jones, and there's lots of other people in the movement, they talk about lots and lots of things, but then, you know, we find out that, you know, they're supporting politicians like Donald Trump, you know. And again, I don't really know a lot about Donald Trump, but I know he's spoken out against Muslims, and he's suggested that, you know, Muslims shouldn't be allowed in America and every Muslim needs to be registered and blah blah blah. Now, to me, that's a very serious level of persecution, I think, against a whole mass of people just on the strength that they're Muslim. And I was very surprised that David Icke hasn't come out and slammed Donald Trump about that, but he has called Hillary Clinton pure evil. Now, I'm not suggesting that she is or she isn't. You know, as far as I'm concerned, she's had her fingers in some very nasty pies, and she's made, you know, that comment, we came, we saw, he died, was really despicable when we consider the way Colonel Gaddafi had died, you know, and we look at the levels of the standards of living amongst the Libyan people under his leadership and what he provided for his country, and we compare those to the leaders of Britain and the leaders of America that have left 50 odd million people living in their cars. You know, did Colonel Gaddafi really deserve to suffer that fate that he suffered? Because we know he wasn't part of ISIS, because it's actually ISIS that have now taken control of that country. So, you know, I find it disturbing, and I do feel there is an agenda going on, you know. So, anyway, here we have this video that was put on, you know, and it's about conspiracy theories. He's about to go to Australia and give this tour, and Australian news have covered this tour in a, you know, sort of mocking way, saying, would you pay $100 to go and listen to David Icke? And they have David Icke on, and they're really rude to him, they mock him, and you know, people have complained about that, you know, that they, you know, I don't agree with David Icke, but these reporters are complete dirtbags. You know, you invite him on your show and then mock him in front of the world. Now, this is what I understand of it, and to me, this is evidence of my lateral thinking, okay, which isn't falling in judgment against anybody. It's just understanding what's going on in order that we can move out of that. And even people like David Icke might be caught in these arenas without even knowing it. So we could be helping them. So the idea isn't to attack people because we found them wrong or complicit in some way. But the idea is to liberate everybody from the wrong ways that we're living, you see. So I've put the whole show as probably a huge ad for David Icke. PSYOP media mind games. They publicly ridicule in full knowledge that many viewers will thus be turned on to Icke as a truther as evidence of media ridicule appears to confirm. I've noticed this strategy is now regularly used to convince people that someone is genuine because the media is slamming them. It's a subversion of positive publicity via expressing negativity in order to convince people to jump from the fryer into the fire under the delusion they are opposing media guidance when in fact the media is still the main source of influence. We're living in tricky times and tricksters run this planet right now. If the media were so against Icke, why give him an interview in the first place? In reality, had the media supported Icke, who would have taken him seriously? I'm not suggesting my hypothesis is completely true, but it is a possibility or even a probability when we consider the very sophisticated levels of intelligence used in stuff like social engineering via psyops. The whole idea of a magician is that we do not see their sleight of hand. The very fact that Icke began as a TV reporter is a fact of evidence to add into the mix. So, we need to think about these things, because what I'm saying is take everything into account, you see. Now, the idea that we should follow one person and everybody's waiting for this one man who's either going to be slammed as the Antichrist or celebrated as the new Messiah, and it will be both. We can guarantee it because of the divisions in this world. We know anybody who stood up as the Messiah today would also be accused of being the Antichrist. So, again, there's confusion there. Now, in a effort to clear the confusions, we do need, as this man has explained in his simple way, and while he's giving this interview, he's performing what he calls, well, I think that is what he is doing, it seems to me, because he talks about the way forward is to commit outrageous acts, and it's an outrageous act to engage in lateral thinking. And so he's walking around with two sets of wheels and wheeling them around in a circle as he's giving this interview. And people are obviously wondering what he's doing, why he's got these wheels, blah, blah, blah. But to him, he's performing an outrageous act. And what he's doing is, just by being himself and doing, like wearing two hats, the man says to him, why are you wearing two hats? And he said, well, maybe the question is why I'm not wearing three hats, you see. And so just by doing what he's doing, he's taking people out of the norm, because he's doing something different. He's doing something different. And that makes people question. Suddenly people are confused. But just in the very moment that they see him and they become confused, they are actually now connected to reality, to their real sense of self, which is a state of confusion. We're all in that state because we've all been kept mystified, you see. Now, somebody like David Icke, he claims to abolish the mystery, to tell us to, lift the veils off the system, and he does provide, give us a lot of information about Satanists and all this kind of thing. And this man here, this one, this person, the scariest movie ever person whose channel this is, has made 2 videos suggesting that David Icke, well, asking the question, is David Icke Illuminati? And he's found some evidence related to Arizona Wilder and the satanic abuse thing, and she's now claiming that she was actually programmed. She's not saying the satanic abuse wasn't real. No, she isn't. She's not backtracked from that. But what she's saying is that the satanic abuse had programmed her to change her name to Arizona Wilder and to appear on to be interviewed by David Icke, who magically appeared in her life, and she's since changed her name, and she's still, standing up against Satanism and, supporting victims, but she's not part of this sensationalist thing that, David Icke had made out of her story. Now, I do find it interesting, personally I find it interesting, that David Icke was there to talk to this woman and give her major publicity about satanic abuse at very high levels. But at the same time, somebody like me, who for 24 years has written to him intermittently, to his staff, to his websites, I even subscribed to his website, I was what you call a platinum member of his thing for a while, asking him to please talk to me about my light being experience and the understanding of universal law of abundance and compassion that came with it, you see. And I've really written and said, look, it was a real experience. I'm not on drugs. I'm not a drinker. I'm just a normal, ordinary person. I'm not trying to make money out of it, or I don't want to be. I'm not seeking fame and fortune, but I just feel that this is important, just even to talk about with somebody and to think about and to consider the implications, because I need help, you see, because I've just had to go through this on my own. I've had to live with that experience in this world, which totally took me out of this world. So, and then try and live in the normal world as well. And then on the other side, I've also got a history of the child abuse I endured, which again takes me out of the norm of society, because people don't want to talk about that, or if I mention it, it somehow clouds people's judgment against me. And so I do try to help in every way that I can. And to me, it is a big concern that David Icke and Alex Jones and a lot of other people in the truth movement, they're not talking about children's rights. And children are they are the foundation of everything that's wrong with this world. At the foundation of it is abuse of children and ignorance of children's needs and rights. And the world continues to ignore that as an issue, as a trivial, minor issue, because children are just a minor concern, when actually, no, they are VIPs, because they are our future. And so, it's like saying, well, I've got this much wealth, and actually, if I use it wisely and use it properly, I can increase the wealth. So let's say happiness and joy are a wealth, okay? And both of those are dependent on the gold, which is universal law. So let's take gold away as a foundation of wealth and replace it with universal law, which upholds human, child, animal and earth rights, okay? So that is our wealth, because that is what is going to sustain us. It's going to help us. It's going to facilitate an arena in which people can work cooperatively together, live respectfully together, non-judgmentally together, and to celebrate our diversity, our natural diversity as human beings, in the sense that we do have different faiths, different cultures and different skills, and we've all got different things to give. We're all individuals, unique in our own way, and that is why humanity isn't designed as a species to be governed by one body of leadership. We're just not made that way, because we're so different and we have so many different needs. But universal law does accommodate all of them just by simply recognising our individual rights as human beings, and also explaining to us that our planet has rights as well, and so do the animals, the creatures that our planet sustains. They have rights as well, because without them we couldn't be here, you see. And from there, you know, and when you look at every religion, you know, like somebody like David Icke says, and the New World Order people, the so-called New Age thinkers. Now, a lot of people have called me a New Ager or a hippie, you know, but no, because I'm not New Age. Because there is no New Age here. We're living in the past, and and now they want to re-endorse the past, repackage it and represent it as a new world order, which is actually just going right back to the days of Roman antiquity, really. You know, whereas what I'm saying is that no, we need to connect with our roots of our original cultures, which was for the African, their original culture, the Druids, their original culture, you know, and the native peoples of Australia and America, their original culture. Because those cultures, I mean, yes, they were from a very long time ago, and obviously if they hadn't been cut down so early, who knows what they would have developed to by now. But at the end of the day, they were cut down, they were arrested, but in that arrest has been frozen in time knowledge and understanding of how those people lived. And generally when we look at the native peoples, we can see that the vast majority of them lived in harmony with their environment. They paid respect to their environment, and you know, there was a matriarchy patriarchy balance going on within those communities, you see. And because that's the whole idea of a patriarchy, because you know, you can't have a father without a mother, can you? And vice versa, really. You know, there's got to be a father in there somewhere. Even if you get artificially inseminated, there's still a father there. So this idea that we're living in a patriarchy, again, is a huge lie. It isn't a patriarchy, it's an oligarchy, which is comprised of male and female human beings who adhere to a Roman construct of what a man is, you see, and a Roman construct of what a woman is. Whereas when we look at the Bible, we see that the construct of man includes female, because God says very clearly, and it must be God and Goddess, because they say our, you know, let us make man in our image, both male and female, and set them to tame the earth. Them, you see. So we know that man is also a woman. So, you know, so in the Bible, when people are talking about the return of Jesus, you know, the man is going to come back. You know, the man is going to return, and the witnesses are going to be a man. You know, I mean, I've wondered if I am a witness, because I did witness the light being. Am I a witness? I don't know. But then I thought, no, I can't be, because I'm a woman, and it says the witness is going to be a man. But now I think, well, actually, I am a man. I am a man. According to Genesis, I'm a man. I am a female. Being a female human being, I am a man. According to Jah. So, you know, maybe I am a witness then. I don't have to be a male human to be a man, to be considered man. And again, this is something that, you know, Romans took away from women, was their right to be recognised equal as a human. Instead, they were a vessel to carry the man and to be used by the man according to his will, you see. And according to Romans, children were nothing at all. You know, you didn't have to respect children. You could do what you liked with children. Now, as I was saying, if universal law is a wealth, and we're not putting that into our children, then as a species we're going to become more and more impoverished. So we might have a lot of material advantages in some ways, but we know that whatever materiality is gained in this world, there's a lot of people that have been robbed of materiality. So if we look, say, for example, at Europe, we can see here that people have lots of clothes, they have an abundance of things. They might not have an abundance of money, everybody, but still, even with only a little bit of money, you can buy an abundance of things in this society. You know, whether you go to regular shops or to your local car boot sale. But then on the other side of that picture, we see that there's, you know, Europe is less than 1 billion people, but we see that 4.5 billion people in the world are living on the equivalent of $1 a day, and they are living very deprived and impoverished lives, and they have no access even to grow their own food. Their lands are controlled by the corporations that are filling our supermarkets. Now, you know, I'm not saying people should feel guilty about that, but we should. We need to be responsible. We need to feel responsible for it, because we're living in a false sense of abundance, in an abundance that's been provided through the suffering of others, and that is ignorance of universal law, because universal law upholds human and child and animal and earth rights. But we know that the things that we're receiving for our money that's based on gold and not universal law, these things are often being achieved through criminal means, you see. So that means that what the people in the West are investing in their children is basically debt. And so it means that every woman who brings a baby into this society now, you know, and I don't want to put people off, and I don't want people to be depressed about having babies, because, you know, as I say, I'm just explaining this, but at the same time I'm explaining there is hope for a better world, so please don't lose hope. You know, my idea here isn't to scare people and drive people to depression, as often I feel I'm in a deep depression because of the confusions and because of the lies and everything that is happening and the horrors that are happening. They are very difficult, but what has helped me through it is my understanding of higher intelligence, Jah, universal love, universal law, and, you know, these are very important for us to hold on to, even though they might burn our hands at times, which they do. You know, it's very difficult to hold on to at times, but we need to hold on to it, because this is what the children need. This is our children's right here. It isn't something that's been created by humanity. It is something that has created humanity for humanity to live creatively with. And as I've said in previous videos, just as every single religion on this planet virtually has had no problems incorporating money into their religion, you see, then simultaneously now they cannot turn around and say we cannot incorporate universal law. And the idea is that universal law is going to liberate people to lead themselves, and then we can choose people to best represent and uphold universal law. It isn't about a personality cult or idol worship. You know, take Clement Attlee, for example. I mean, nobody would have looked at him twice. He was a little innocuous looking man, you know, who came on and did the most amazing radical changes in this country that has ever been seen in the whole of British history. Probably spelled his name wrong. But, you know, there's Clement Attlee, and it was him that got Labour into power and, you know, set up the welfare state and set up the NHS and nationalised industries and all these things. But we hardly ever hear of Clement Attlee, you know. It's very, very rare that you will see Clement Attlee. You'll see things about Margaret Thatcher as having changed the whole system. You know, she's done amazing things, apparently. But, you know, look at the difference between them two. But he didn't get a state funeral. She did. We never hear about him, but we still hear about Winston Churchill. We very rarely hear about Winston Churchill ordering the troops to train guns on striking miners after World War II. And the troops refused, and that was when they knew the system was up, the game was up, and that's why Clement Attlee was brought in. Now, the thing about Clement Attlee is that it wasn't him who created the policies. The policies were actually created from the demands of the people. He did not stand up as an ego and say, yes, all of this is just from me. He represented a force of power from the common people. He represented their aspirations, their rights, their needs. And basically what the people were saying was that, look, they robbed us of our social security, which was our common lands, from 1750 onwards. They criminalised us. You know, they even said we weren't allowed to pick nuts and fruit from forests. We weren't allowed to hunt a rabbit. We weren't allowed to fish. You know, they made us totally dependent on this economic system, and now we're slaves. We were just slaves to it. And they use us when they want us and then throw us away when we don't. And our retirement, our pension, is a workhouse, which for the majority of people it was. So they said, after the wars, we don't want to go back to that. We feel, all right, we're living in a monetary system now, so we think the monetary system should give us our social security by way of healthcare, housing, sanitation, industry, you know, employment. Because before enclosures and industrialisation, most people were self-employed in their own homes, you see. But that was taken away from them by the processes of industry, which then meant that production was totally controlled. It was no longer dependent on people, you know, and that's why our first factories were manned by children, because there were very few adults left. Most of the adults, I think 2 million nearly, had starved to death or been hung or killed or sent abroad to Australia and places like that. So there weren't many adults, so the children, that's why Pitt said put the yoke on the children, and the children had to work in the factories. Now, I remember as a child being told that the children, that the factories employed the children because they were very small and they had much more nimble fingers, and they could get into the machinery better and operate the machinery better. Now, this is what I was taught at school. And I remember as a child, and I think children, that's why we need to talk to our children more. We need to listen to them, talk to them, share, teach them, tell them the truth. You know, because I think children are natural lateral thinkers. And I remember as a child saying to my teacher, well, why didn't they make the machines so that adults could use them, miss? Do you see what I mean? And straight away she just looked at me and she said, well, because, you know, in those days that was the best that they could do. They could only make them that size. But she knew and I knew that was no answer. That was no answer. Because adults would have made machines for adults to use, and which we know adults did run those machineries later when child labour was abolished. But that's what I'm saying. These are the kind of the information they give to people leaves people confused. And as a child, I was confused that why adults would build factory machinery for that only children really could operate, you see. And so these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. And like I say, I'm not saying David Icke and Alex Jones are shills, for sure. They could just be compromised, and we have to accept that people in this world, we're all compromised in one way or another. And the higher up you get in the media thing, the more likely you are to be compromised, because suddenly you might have a lot more to lose, and a lot more people might be involved. So, as I say, when I explain about this media psyop game, I think it's very, very important that we do get wise to this psyop agenda, that the media is using negative publicity, negative judgments and things against certain people that they want to sell to us on the other side through the alternative media. So the moment the media slams somebody and ridicules him, I mean, normally they wouldn't treat anybody like that, but in a way, just by their outrageous ridicule of David Icke, openly, publicly ridiculing him, they have given him massive amounts of publicity and support, because lots of people will instantly feel sorry for David Icke and think, yeah, as they show in these comments, and it basically, but at the same time, the whole show's a giant advertisement. It tells people how much tickets are, $100. And again, to me, to charge people $100 to go and listen to the truth, when in a country where the native peoples are, oh gosh, I can't even describe how terrible it is, just what a shame it is, and what a pain it is to the universe, to universal law, to witness the native peoples of countries like Australia and America living in poverty, criminalised, left with so little in life that really their own, they have to anaesthetise themselves with alcohol. A lot of them are committing suicide. And so for David Icke to go to a country like that and to be charging $100 to talk to people about the truth, there is something going on here. And the idea that, we're all waiting for this figure. Well, Jesus said, I am in everybody. And Prophet Muhammad said exactly the same thing. I am in everybody. Everybody who connects to themselves will connect to me. And Jesus said the same thing. So the idea is that Jesus returns, or Prophet Muhammad returns, and all the people, because every single religion has this idea that, the person of God is going to come back and save them. But that person is in us. And that person comes when Jesus is in us, when Prophet Muhammad is in us, when Krishna is in us, when we are aligned with the law that all of them, Buddha, Krishna, all the religions support universal law. But they all have their different ways of worship and doing their things. Okay? And that is beloved of the universe. The universe loves our diversity. It loves it. Because that is lateral thinking, you see. And that's what we're created to do. To take everything into account. To turn corners. To turn a corner. Because light bends, you see. Light bends with the force of gravity, universal gravity. light bends. And for a human consciousness, gravity is facts, solid facts, information, truth, theories, established theories based on a solid understanding of the truth. So we can say, because we know, we can smell the sea. We know that if we turn this corner, there's likely going to be a seaside there. We can smell the sea, we're going to see the sea. We're getting close to the sea. Do you see what I mean? That we pick up on senses of things that we can't necessarily see or hear or touch, but we can smell something, you see, and that scent tells us something. And so then we can make an opinion about, well, what is around the corner. But you see, a lot of people are afraid to turn the corner because they can't see what is around the corner. So therefore, when you turn a corner, you automatically slow down. There's like a caution, an element of caution there. And that's a natural thing. And it's at that point, you see, the cautionary bit, as people start to slow down, then suddenly you need some very strong, powerful lights in order to say to people, no, the light's going this way, straight ahead, down the Roman roads. We know where it's going, look. Revelations. And out of that horror will come the new world utopia. You see. But really, no, just turn the corner. Because we don't need all that horror. And at the end of the day, you know, let's take, for example, Revelations. I'm not saying Revelations is true or false, okay, but what I'm saying is that somebody, a set of Roman officials, chose to put that in the Bible. And at the same time, they dismissed other books that could have gone in, you know, that are actually more relevant. So, and when you look at Revelations, you do see it is a mishmash of all the prophets, what the prophets have experienced in the Old Testament. So has somebody put it together and created this picture which was against Caesar? But at the end of the day, the number of the beast is in there. And it does say whoever receives that number shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. So why would anybody include that in the Bible when it contains a number that apparently anybody who reads it isn't going to arrive in the kingdom of heaven? Because anybody who receives it, you know, but we're supposed to understand that, no, we're going to receive it as an imprint on our hand or on our forehead. But no, it says anybody who receives this number. So, you know, and I just don't trust that, you see, because we don't really know how it got into the Bible. It doesn't seem to be something that was around in the time of Jesus or that Jesus supported, because Jesus very clearly supported Prophet Isaiah. And Prophet Isaiah asks us to give justice to the fatherless child. Well, I've just explained that the children of humanity today are fatherless in the sense that humanity, man and woman as man, is not following any true sense of law or delivering justice to the children. And this is where we need to go. Now, I'm not saying there won't be trouble the moment people start changing their minds and getting real. Excuse me. I really apologise for my voice. Got terrible hay fever at the moment. But anyway, so the children, you know, if we're not following any true sense of justice, the moment people do start demanding justice for children, of course there's going to be trouble, because the powers that depend entirely on exploitation and also abusing children, they are going to rally against us. You know, they're going to move against us, they're going to ridicule us, they're going to be afraid of us and blah blah blah, because they don't want things to change. They know that the only way is to keep us hooked on their agendas and on their beliefs, and to keep us confused. So obviously, you know, if David Icke was standing up there saying we need UN and EU style child protection directives for all children, that's the because it's the only thing that's going to protect them. When you give children rights and justice, that's the only thing that can protect them. That a child reporting a crime has an independent legal guardian. That suspects proof of innocence, onus of proof is on suspects as well as the child. That if a child's got to go through a sexual examination in order to, you know, confirm their allegations, then why shouldn't adults who are implicated as suspects show their genitalia to police to prove, if a child's described their genitals, to prove that, look, you know, the child's had to go through it to make the allegation. Surely the suspect has to be investigated in some way. If a child that's reporting sexual abuse has to be sexually examined, surely the suspects then do need to be investigated in some way, whether it's to show their genitals, whether it's to look at their mobile phones or whatever. Now that's what's at the crux of the whole thing. Now I'm seeing people say things like, what we need is, you know, something like a child crime reporting TV thing. No, we don't. We need child protection directives that care about children, that are written by people who extensively studied the problem. And, you know, we've got this thing now of the ICSA in England doing its independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. But at the end of the day, we don't need it. Because, you know, the people who wrote the UN and EU Child Protection Directives have already studied the whole blooming thing. They know what's going on. And that's why they've come up with these child protection directives. So why is Britain spending this enormous amount of money, time and effort on its inquiry? Okay. If not to arrest people, suspects, identify suspects, that should be the main thing of such an inquiry, is to identify victims and suspects, make sure the victims are given treatment, compensation, whatever, make sure the suspects are no longer a harm to people, or they are, you know, incarcerated in some way. Though, for me, you know, putting people in prison isn't the answer. I think we need, as I say, gated communities for the ones that can't be helped, perhaps other methods to make people safe that have got an addiction to sexual desires for children, and also centres for people to come who haven't abused children but who feel they've got desires to do that and want help to stop themselves doing that, which I said those people should be thoroughly commended and helped in every way that they can. Okay. And so to me, you know, the idea, you know, there's lots of people saying, oh, we should kill them, we should burn them, we should shoot them. I understand, I do totally empathise with that feeling. I know how horrible it is, you know, and the anger, the levels of anger. But as I say, being human is, we were asked to tame the life on Earth. And so that means we need to tame ourselves as well. And we need to tame these desires to really hurt. I mean, I get so angry. I shout, I scream, I get so angry. But I don't hurt anybody, you know. It doesn't drive me to plotting revenge and things like this. Because even just the thought of going down that road makes me feel sick. Because I know it's stuff like that has perpetuated the whole thing. So, as I say, once we live by law, it doesn't mean to say we're not going to fall out with people, we're not going to have disagreements, we're not going to have to disassociate ourselves with certain people at times because they make us feel that bad. But it doesn't mean that we're going to, you know, persecute those people or be nasty to them or damage them, you know, because they've upset us. Sometimes people need time, you know, and I've had people really apologise to me in tears sometimes for things that they said about me in the past, judgments they'd made against me in the past, or things that they'd done against me in the past, and because they had one idea about me, and then they realised that they were wrong, and they've apologised, and I've totally forgiven them, and I've not felt any nastiness towards them. I know they were genuinely sorry, and to me, that is just wonderful, and I don't want them to feel guilty. My feeling then is no, I just want to take that pain of guilt away from you. Please don't carry it. I'm not carrying that anymore now. It's gone, and let's start afresh, because there's more to be built on the positivity in that person, the present positivity, than there is to be gained by focusing on the past negativity of the person that has now arrived at a new understanding and is genuinely remorseful. And that's the idea of forgiveness. But you couldn't just forgive somebody who's abused you as a child, never said sorry. That person is still working with children, probably abusing more children. Your forgiveness, while you've got a forgiveness in your heart towards them, at the same time, we can't continue to leave children at risk just because we have personally forgiven that abuser, because it's not up to us to forgive them on behalf of further abuse that they're going to do to other children, you see. So, this is what I mean about lateral thinking, about how we apply forgiveness and how we understand. Because when we take the law into account, then suddenly, there are levels of forgiveness that people can achieve. So while we might accept, the law accepts that everybody is ultimately forgiven, but at the same time, some people are at risk because of their psychological problems, okay? So therefore we have to take steps always to protect children. So I'm sorry, your freedom is a risk to children, so therefore we need to curtail your freedom, because you are a danger to the freedom of children. And children have a right to freely move about in society and feel safe, because any society that can't provide that to children, what kind of society is it? You see. So at the moment we're being persuaded that it's perfectly normal to live in a society where children must be very heavily controlled because of the risks that other people form on them. So, it's basically the children that are being made prisoners. You go to the schools and you see they're surrounded in fences and they're locked and all this kind of thing. And I don't think it is a good thing. I don't think it's the way to deal with the underlying problem. So, that's really all I wanted to say in this video, is just to put forward this different approach, this idea, not to be waiting for the second coming, because the second coming will happen inside you as an individual. And the person that the people, it's not just one person, but the people that come to represent you will also be like you. They will have woken up within themselves, and they will be sharing your idea, like happened in Britain when the whole country was united to have nationalised industry, welfare state and NHS and all this kind of thing. Now, notice also that the British people of that time were very fair, because they didn't impose a Soviet Union style thing where everything was nationalised and no private property was allowed to be owned and blah blah blah. No, they didn't. Capitalism was accepted to continue alongside the socialist aspect, and the two did could have worked very well together, but it's unfortunate that the capitalists get very greedy, and they are coming from a totally different side of consciousness where Margaret Thatcher, they want to return to Victoria Britain, where people have no rights whatsoever. You can use the workforce, they're an expendable commodity, use them while they're fit, throw them away when they're unhealthy. No, don't give them any compensation if they get injured at work. Yeah, forget about children, you know, they're just a minor concern, we don't really need to worry about them. What we need is lots of money and getting people into debt. And as I say, the women of today are being asked to pay to go out to work and earn money to raise their children who they hardly ever get to see, okay, in order for those children then to grow up so they can earn money to repay the debt. So, excuse me, where are these children coming from again? Who's actually producing the children? Who's carrying them? Who's delivering them? Women. Okay, the females of man, the female aspect of man, is putting in all the work, effort, time, energy, emotion, blood, sweat, tears to raise a child safely in this world, get it to adulthood, and then that child then goes off to be a slave to a host of corporate interests to earn money to repay the debt that the mother incurred, the mother's generation and the grandparents' generation incurred just by being alive on a planet that's controlled by a set of criminal bankers whose money absolutely entirely revolves around a system of debt. So women need to ask ourselves, excuse me, where do I come into all this? You know. Now, most human societies before Rome, women were during their menstrual periods would have time off. You see, because they're women, it was recognised. Now, religions turned that into a kind of a curse. Oh yeah, well, you're unclean during that period, so it means you've got to be away from everybody. But no, it had nothing to do with being unclean. It was just that women, it was recognised originally that women needed a rest during that period because there's cramps, backache, headaches, there's all kinds of things involved that women really just need a bit of a break. So that was women's break time. But women aren't getting that in this world. They're expected to work alongside men while they're having to go through periods, you know, menstruating. They're still expected to go to work. I mean, a lot of them do end up having to have days off, so that means that they're losing money because they're a woman. And, you know, as I say, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and in the 70s I was so active in, you know, equality, women's rights, equality amongst races and all these things. And I find it very, very disturbing that, you know, the levels of oppression against women that go on under cover of us living, supposedly having our equal rights. And, you know, why has the BBC... We've seen loads and loads of programmes about Churchill and, you know, other politicians, but really Clement Attlee, throughout my childhood, I didn't even know who he was. Hardly. You know, I didn't even know who he was. Him, yes. Well, I think that's Churchill. Him, yes, I knew all about him, but Clement Attlee, no. You know, and he wasn't an idol. He wasn't a public idol. And this is what I mean about the people we need to choose as leaders, to accept as leaders. They're not going to be somebody, you know, a great big glossy personality. They could be just a normal person like Attlee who just genuinely represents the people. Now, people are telling me that Jeremy Corbyn is just such a person, But as I say, in the same as what I've said about David Icke here, and how the media is used to make people appear popular, then the same could apply to Jeremy Corbyn. I'm not saying it does, because we do live in such a confusing world. We can't be sure about things either way, but we can be informed to take things into account. And again, it does concern me that Jeremy Corbyn has not just come out and supported child protection directives, and he hasn't mentioned it. Maybe he will, if he is a true Clement Attlee kind of a figure. Maybe he will reflect the people's voice when they say, yes, we want UN and EU style protection directives, because they are the only thing really that's going to give us any real clout and power in addressing crimes against children, rooting out the criminals, preventing crimes against children, and actually adequately protecting children. And yes, we need to abandon the secrecy as well around child abuse. So, that's all I wanted to share today. I do also want to mention Bill Cooper. I mean, he didn't trust David Icke, but, I would advise you to check his videos out. I think this person, he is an honest man, and, it's very sad that he's no longer with us, and he was murdered, as this video says. But, he tells people what is really going on, and he does discuss things like UFOs as well, and, and again, that's another thing that's been kept in the mystery zone, but we know that they are there. And so, if you really want to know what's going on in the world, you don't need to listen to David Icke, because a lot of what David Icke's saying, William Cooper already was saying at that time. Now, people like me, I didn't know, because he was in America. I had no access to the internet or anything when he was alive, and so I didn't know. It was actually after he died, quite a few years after he died, that I discovered William Cooper. And I think he was a genuine human being, and he was genuinely trying to share the truth with people, and he was in a very different league to David Icke and Alex Jones, and he didn't like Alex Jones either, but again, I'm not saying that he was absolutely correct in that David Icke and Alex Jones are total shills, because they do tell us some truth. But as I say, we need to understand that everybody that are in those kind of positions, where they've got a lot of attention, a lot of public attention, are going in some way to be compromised. So, we need to follow this man's example and exhibit some lateral thinking. And I'd like this opportunity to say thank you to him for sharing and just being. He's basically just being. He's being, and he's being outrageous, you see, because he's not being according to conformed, established programs of how we're supposed to be, and anyway, I hope this has helped people. I hope it's helped people understand a bit more about what I'm about. I'm not about supporting the idea of the second coming and all this, because as I say, the second coming is actually just ourselves returning to ourselves. Some people call it evolution, psychological evolution, you know, which I have called it that in the past, but you know, in a lot of ways, it isn't really about our evolution, because because as time's told, we've actually psychologically devoluted. You know, we've become lesser than what we were, and we're not using our brains as much. And so we need to start using our minds, and you know, so really, it is revolution, isn't it? Which is revolution. So what we need is a complete turnaround, because the world is upside down. We put the child at the bottom of the heap, and basically the paedophile is on top of the heap. Mr. Paedophiles are the ones who are controlling, running everything. Okay? They're the ones that get most protection, have got most money, and the child is right at the bottom of the heap. So that is upside down. The child should be first, and everybody else comes last, according to how much they are prepared to uphold universal law and tend to the needs of the child, who can be trusted to tend to the needs of the child, because the child is very vulnerable. So who do we trust to guard the child? Do we trust a beast to guard the child, or do we trust human beings guided by universal law? You know, the beast in his debt, or people who uphold and abide by universal law, who aren't there for power and egotism. They are there because they genuinely care about the child, and they want to provide the best to that child. So as I say, if we see universal law as a wealth, and we're investing it into our children, then they are going to create more and more and more wealth, and we're always going to live in abundance, because wealth, we will be living a richer life. We might not have as many plastic bits of useless things and ornaments, because we don't want them, but we will have a true sense of humanity and kinship. And that is really what is lacking in this world. And that's what people miss. Acceptance. People don't feel accepted. And a lot of people think that they can be accepted by fitting in with society. And I know I tried to do it for quite a few years, from my teens to my late 20s, really trying to fit in and just be accepted. But at the end of the day, in the very process of doing that, we become non-accepting of ourselves. So for me, in order to be accepted in society, I had to dismiss and deny my experiences of abuse as a child. I had to lock them away and never mention them or talk about it to anybody. And so I had to disconnect from a part of myself and pretend. And I don't know any of that, you know. And actually, this is a wonderful world, run by really good people who don't abuse children. And what happened to me was just a horrible sort of anomaly of life that can happen. But, you know, but then I'm constantly having to deny my pain, and I'm having to deny the knowledge, just the whole thing. So actually, I'm not being accepted. I'm not being accepted. There is no acceptance of me. I'm having to compromise even acceptance of myself. I have to ignore certain aspects of myself in order to be accepted into the world. And we all need to do that to some degree. And even paedophiles have to pretend that they're normal in order to secretly get access to children. But they've got an agenda, you know. They secretly serve their inner self as their perverse desires, as well as putting up a facade for the world. But they know that that's a facade, you see, and they use it to their advantage. Whereas most people like myself, in trying just to fit in and be accepted, we don't know that the world's a facade. We think that's reality, and our personal experiences and lives and feelings and understanding, they're a sort of sub-reality. Anyway, I'm sorry if it seems complicated. I know I've been droning on now for over an hour, it looks. So anyway, I hope it's helped people. I just don't know what else to do really, apart from share things in these videos that I make. I know they're not the highest, they're definitely not high quality, and I'm not a professional video maker, and I don't write stuff down, you know, that I'm going to say. I just speak as it comes to me. So thank you very, very much for listening, and sending everybody love, strength and healing energies. Thank you.